Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am Todd Keisling, and this is my launch party. Well, it would be if I actually had my graphics working. That's okay, though. Welcome. This is the launch party for my long-awaited novel, The Sundowner's Dance, which is out today from Shortwave Publishing. I have a group of amazing authors and publishers joining me this evening, and we're just going to jump right in it and talk about all things Sundowner's Dance. About half an hour in, I'm going to read a little bit from the book, and then we'll open it up to questions after that. So thanks for tuning in, and on with the show. So let's see. I have the incredible Miss Laurel Hightower.
Hi, happy release day.
Thank you. I have the amazing and curmudgeonly Brian Keene.
Curmudgeonly?
Yeah.
The script said cute.
My bad.
Happy release day.
Thanks, brother. Also joining us is my publisher and dear friend, Alan Lastufka.
Hey.
Did I mispronounce that?
Lastufka, you got it right the first time.
Sweet. And also, last but not least, the fabulous, the phantasmagoric, Robert P. Ottone.
Aloha, it's me again. Congratulations on your book, Todrick.
Thanks, man. So, I asked you all here because you have all either said some very nice things about my book or were instrumental in making the book happen. In a lot of cases, both at the same time. So I really appreciate you guys being here tonight and just chatting with me and making this day even more special than it already is. So thank you both. Thank you all, not both.
No, he's only thinking two of us, and we have to figure out which ones.
That's true.
Definitely me. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Talk amongst yourselves.
So, Sundowner's Dance has been a long time coming, it feels like. And, I mean, for me, from the moment I started it, we're looking at a road of like 7 years. Wasn't always working on it entirely in that time, but you guys know how it goes. You start a project and it kind of, goes off course of what you work, the way you think it should be going, and it kind of takes a while to right the car around and head off in the right path. So,
what do you think it was that, what were some of the things that kind of like distracted you in that time, or maybe like made you not, you know what I mean? Like not continue with it when you were like knee deep in it. Like what were some of the things that were like, oh, maybe this is too this or too whatever. Like what was the tea with that?
I think the biggest reason it went off track early on is because I started it not long after I finished Devil's Creek. And anybody who's followed my career or is familiar with my work knows what a monster that book is. And writing it was significantly longer than what got published, and I did all of that in like 10 months, which is an incredibly short amount of time for the amount of words that went into that book. And trimming it down, all the edits and everything, it was like everything in my life kind of swirled around it, orbited it in some way. And once I was finally done, the last thing I wanted to do was write anything over 5,000 words. So when I started digging into the story and I kind of got to see like where it was going, I really got frustrated with it because I knew it wanted to be longer and I just didn't have it in me. So I switched gears, put it aside for a while, and that's kind of why it languished in a drawer for several years.
Well, yeah, and didn't you say this started as a short story or was inspired by one of your short stories?
Yeah, it started as, in my mind, it was going to be a novelette. So I was expecting like a 10,000 word story. And, from start to finish, I already had an ending in mind. originally things weren't going to go so well for the protagonist, Jerry. And once I got to like, I think the original draft, in its shortest form, I got around the 10,000 word mark, and it was the first gathering at the park and all that horror that entails. So when I got there, I realized, oh, there's so much more to this, and there's more that needs to go in before I even get to this point. I'm like, no, I'm not ready for this.
So what is this clock in at word wise? I read it, but I don't, I wasn't counting the words.
What did we say, Alan? Was it like 91,000 after all the edits were done?
Somewhere around there,
that's
yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, the exact word
Nicely
count is on the
done.
website, but it's between 90 and 100K, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this the longest thing Shortwave has published to date, Alan?
Not including anthologies, yes. It's like 3,000 words over my own novel, which was the longest until this one came along.
Okay.
Yeah, this book's a pretty big deal for us as a small press. This is only the second horror novel we've done so far. The first being my own. We have others coming later this year, but yeah, Todd was great in reaching out, and like we've done mostly novellas and novelettes and anthologies up to this point, and so it was maybe a little bit of a risk for him to go with us, and a little bit of a risk for us because we don't have much of a history selling novels yet. So this was definitely something different for us to take on, and it worked out really well. I don't know if everyone saw this morning, but we announced this is our 5th best-selling title so far on the day of release. We had over 1,400 pre-orders for the hardcover alone.
That's great.
Yeah, so this has been fantastic so far.
Oh yes.
Wow. I mean, for me, it wasn't really a risk to go with you guys, Alan. It really wasn't. I mean, we shopped it at every Big 5 press and imprint we could find, and it was always, if you've ever had to shop something to the Big 5 before, it's always, we really loved this, but it didn't check every single box on what they were looking for, so unfortunately they had to pass. So when it came time to kind of evaluate where we were in terms of submissions and everything, I got together with Becky, my agent, and we kind of decided, okay, well, if we're going to pitch this to indie presses, who would you want to pitch it to? Because I have a storied history with some indie presses, and you all know how volatile the indie press world can be. So I wanted somebody with stability, somebody who seemed to know what they were doing, knows what they're doing, and also has an appreciation for the details, like what the book looks like, for example. And at the top of that list is Shortwave Publishing, because I mean, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 2 years, Alan is doing incredible things in the indie horror market, in the indie press market, especially because he cares about those details and he knows what he's doing. And that's how you get a book that looks like this.
And it's fucking gorgeous.
And I mean, just the boards. He even did that. And I don't know, you don't see that coming out of an indie press anywhere else in the market. So I suspect that this is only the first of what will become several works with Shortwave in the future, provided he'll have me back and isn't tired of my, neurotic emails.
While we're talking about, because yes, the book is a work of art. They're going to be faced out at our store tomorrow morning in the K section. I don't imagine they'll last long, but that's okay. You'll be signing there next month. We'll have more. But I want to note the marketing behind this book. I have told anybody that will listen that the brochure you made up in
that
advance
was awesome.
of this release, I think it's one of the best things I've ever seen in this business, and I mean that sincerely. I wish I'd had one. All I have is this pen I stole from you, but if I had one of the brochures here, I would hold it up so folks could see it.
It just so happens I do have a brochure here. So this is the brochure that he is talking about. If you pre-ordered a copy direct from Shortwave, I believe you get one of these. Alan, correct me if I'm wrong.
Every direct order has them. Yeah, we still have plenty here, so anyone who orders now will still get it.
And if you come to one of my in-person events in the near future, I will also have these on hand. I am just grateful that Alan indulged me here because I pitched him this idea because I'd seen other retirement communities have pamphlets like this. And I'm just happy he kind of just rolled with it. I appreciate that.
I like the idea of you going to retirement communities and taking these pamphlets and being like, how can I make this spooky? Just the idea of you creeping around 6'10" of your length frame. Like,
like we're peeking into rooms being like, yeah, that's a creepy motherfucker.
just like grunting to himself and then just sliding out of frame.
I mean, I didn't actually go in person, although now I kind of wish I had.
Yeah, we all do. You should have lied and said, yeah, you should have seen it.
Yeah.
Just go with the bit, man. I hope I get one when I see you next month.
Oh, you will.
Excellent.
You definitely will.
I've had the brochure laying out on the freebie table at the store, and you know, the freebie table is covered with stickers. There's Christopher Triana and Aaron Beauregard stickers and bookmarks for Cassandra Celia, and then you have the brochure in the middle. And what's great is people pick it up and glance at it, and they'll either put it back down or they'll start reading there at the store. And maybe 1 out of every 6 or 7 realizes, oh, this is for a book. And they'll be, do you have this yet? No, not yet. We'll have it at the end of April. So it's definitely effective. I think it's fucking brilliant. If there was a Stoker category for best marketing, you'd have it this year.
Wow.
Yeah, the brochures were a great idea. They're the second one that we've actually done. We did one for a collection for Lindsay Kroll's collection of short stories where we had ads in there, like fake ads for the different companies that show up in the short stories. So there's one where you can like rent a baby to show off on social media and that kind of stuff to get the news and love and all those kinds of things. So
that's brilliant.
Yeah, I love doing these kind of extras with each book. Each book that we do gets a marketing budget, and that marketing budget is right there in the contract. It's guaranteed for the author. And they can kind of do whatever they want with it within reason. And so I do leave options open for, what's more important to you, print arcs or brochures or bookmarks or, whatever. And this is one of the things that Todd wanted to do with the marketing budget, and I loved it. So, and the design that he did is great.
Was that the Limelight one, Lindsay Kroll's?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just a brief shout out. It's a fucking fantastic collection. It's really, really excellent. And the rent to baby story is really stellar. So
yeah, I love her work, especially her short work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am grateful, Alan. Again, thank you for letting me do that. Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough in the budget to like host a sweepstakes to send one lucky reader to a retirement community for like a weekend or something. But maybe next time.
So you talked about, Rob asked you about what was holding you up on some of that stuff. What do you feel like was what got you kind of spurred back into action on finishing it, on really just, devoting your time to it and everything? Because I know how, mood writing and all that sort of thing. So what do you feel like kind of kicked you into action?
Well, it was an anthology invitation, actually. I guess this would have been like late fall 2021, maybe. I got an invitation from Doug Morano, D. Alexander Ward, to write a story for Shadows Over Main Street, Volume 3. And I had been thinking about this story a little bit, and when that opportunity arose, I'm like, okay, maybe I could dig back into this and kind of pull it the guts apart and try to rearrange it into something that's a little bit smaller. And once I returned to the story, I realized one, there's no way without tearing out all the parts that would make it unique. And two, I found myself intrigued by the story, and I decided, okay, I don't want to leave this thing unfinished. And it's been a few years since I've written something super long. So I dove back into it. And when I realized that, okay, this definitely won't be a short story, I messaged Doug and apologized that unfortunately, this story has its hooks in me, so I'm going to have to pass. I can't come up with something else. I'm focused on this. And I guess it was like 2.5 months later is when, maybe 3 months, is when the first full draft was done. And then, I sent it off for feedback. And, Hightower, you specifically had some fantastic feedback that really, I feel like, took the draft to its next level.
Yay.
A lot of important insight, especially into like Jerry and Catherine's relationship. And, you, in the original draft, it was like, oh, they just met each other. Now kiss. There wasn't a lot of this lead up and courtship and stuff, and that all came later. And it's specifically because of Laurel's feedback that even occurred to me, because hi, I'm a male. I'm a 40-year-old male, and it's been a long time since I've had to like think about flirting with somebody other than my wife. It's just not something I have to think about anymore because I'm married happily. And so that definitely put that in perspective for me, and helped me, one of the instrumental parts of nailing those characters.
Well, that's awesome. But I think that was like, I think it was important to me because I loved that element of it, because the relationship that you built with them. And it's one of these, like, I feel like it's one of the things I've always really loved about your work is that it's not just you write these very epic tales, Witness Devil's Creek in particular, but also the Monochrome trilogy, all of that sort of thing. There is a hugely epic layer to everything in the way that you do it, but you never neglect the human element of the relationships in particular. Like when you have a romance, it's beautiful. The Monochrome romance I love, because and that's part of what I loved about their relationship too, the older, that it's falling in love at an older age. It's, we see 15, 20, 25-year-olds fall in love all the time. It's easy to fall in love, but, focusing on that part of life was just something that I really appreciated and really enjoyed. And actually, I think when you talk, it didn't occur to me when you talk about like, hi, I've been married for this long, I don't flirt. That applies to Jerry,
Yeah.
That's who Jerry is. So I think that worked really well.
Thank you. Yeah. It was so strange having to think about myself in, as a 70-year-old man, and like, okay, so what are things that I've taken for granted, that I have taken for granted because of my spouse being there all the time? And, if I remove the spouse from the equation, what am I without her? And that was really one of the driving questions that went into that book, was, what would I be if I didn't have Erica at my side? And, Brian?
Let's talk about process. How do you get yourself in that headspace?
Why were there just balloons that just came?
Let's talk about the balloons that just happened when you raised your hand.
I don't know what that was.
I didn't do that.
That was amazing, though.
You didn't?
The first one was red. I really thought it was an It reference. I was like, dang, Keene. Just take credit for it.
I don't know how that happened.
How did I get myself in that frame of mind?
Yeah, because something like that, I mean, you're among friends here. We all know that's a dangerous headspace to get into.
It is. The truth is that I was not in a good headspace when I really started to dive into that kind of psyche. I've been open about this in other places, and I've talked openly about it. when I was in the process of revising the second draft with Laurel's feedback, Erica had a cancer scare. And, if anybody who's ever had a loved one have to go through that process, there is this period of time where you are in limbo, where, you're waiting on test results, you're waiting on to hear from the doctor, and, testing conclusive. We got to try this, the other thing now. And so then you're waiting again. And in that period of time, I was not okay. That was a pretty dark period of my life, Erica's life, because, I found myself lying awake at night thinking, doom scrolling my own thoughts, really, what's going to happen if this is the worst case scenario, it's inoperable, all this jazz. And, again, back to the question of what will I do without her? And then I started to realize, oh shit, like my entire adult life is posited on there being another person at my side. Because, I was 25 when we got married, and I'm 42 now. And so I was thinking like, okay, so what if, what am I going to do? Because the only reason I'm able to do this stuff full time is because of her income. So, all right, got to go get a job. A job I'm certainly going to hate and despise and resent. But then beyond that, it's like, well, she's the one who always talks to people, when I'm not able to, because we're both very neurodivergent, and we're both on the spectrum, but we complement one another. So it's like, she's kind of like, my half of me. So what I can't handle, she can, and vice versa. And when I started thinking about, well, shit, I'm going to be half a person if something seriously goes wrong here, I found that terrifying, because how would you start over? How would you even begin to start to pick up the pieces and try to assemble what's remaining into a functioning adult,
Right.
So getting into that mindset was, it was not by choice. It's just what I was going through. And the way I dealt with it was putting that into the story, because that was the only way I have ever known to process things. I see Amelia's comment here. Yes.
That's true.
If something happens to me, I know Erica will be taken care of because of Amelia and Laurel. So they're going to have like a little, coven of witches, after.
I just picture like the bring out your dead thing where you're like, I'm not quite dead yet. And we're like, no, we're gathered. Okay. We're taking over.
So yeah, that's a long answer to a short question, but
it's a good answer. And for what it's worth, as somebody who read this as an arc, one of the things that really stood out was just how personally well written that character was. And I suspected some of that went into it, but didn't want to ask when we're hanging out, because we're always busy talking about other things. I'm busy stealing your pens when you're distracted. But
sure.
But yeah, you knocked it out of the park. Good
Thanks,
job,
man. Thank you. I definitely wanted to focus more on character development, because I've had criticism in the past, like especially with Devil's Creek, where people thought the characters weren't very well developed. And you always want to improve with the next thing you work on. So I feel like I took a lot of extra time and really worked on the relationships between the characters and tried to fine tune the dialogue a bit. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the editor I worked with on this, Marissa Van Uden, through Shortwave. She was fantastic, and she came in basically at like the 11th hour and gave the book even more of an edge to it that really made it sing. So props to her, and props to Alan for hiring her too.
She's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Laurel read it. I'm sorry. Laurel read an early draft. I read the art. Robert, when did you read it?
I got to read it to blurb it.
Yeah.
And I loved it right away. It's definitely my favorite Keisling work.
Same.
Before that, it was the one with what's the one with they're watching the videos? What is it? The
Scanlines.
There you go. It was Scanlines before this. And this is, in my mind, superior in every way. And especially since the characters are not the kind of characters we see in every piece of horror fiction. This is not this isn't 20-somethings dealing with something. It's not 30-somethings dealing with something. This is 70-somethings dealing with something. And I really appreciated that. I remember when you kind of like pitched this and you said it's this meets this. Am I allowed to say what it is? What you said?
Yeah, I mean, we pitched it as Cocoon meets The Color Out of Space.
And as soon as I heard that, I was like, yes, I would love, yes, I'm all in on that. Whether you asked me to blurb it or not, I would be all in on that. But yeah, so I got to read it to blurb it. And I read it over the course of like 3 days. I was in my car reading it on my lunch time at work. And then I would go back and teach the children after reading spooky cosmic horror. And the babies had no idea that that's what I was reading on my lunch break, and it worked out for everybody. So it was wonderful, and I love it. It remains my, I've gotten to read a lot of stuff to blurb this year, and this is easily at the top for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. So we had a couple of questions. I'm flagging these and I'll answer them closer to the end, guys. Unless anybody else has anything else to talk about, and then I can answer these now. Sorry if I'm kind of just all over the place. It's been a day.
I think if you because you said about a half an hour and you wanted to do a little reading, right? So
yeah,
if you do a little reading and then we can come back to the 2 questions that are in the chat from Carol and Clay, right?
Sure.
So you want to do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
All
right. I'm going to shift focus here for a second.
Wait, hang on. Clay, you could do a digital lap dance for somebody in attendance if you want. I know you like to do the horror lap dance thing. So I've got a couple bucks, some shekels I could throw your way.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of funny. I wish Clay were like running around my computer screen or something. Be like, oh my God, Sundowner's dance.
Aaron Dries. Oh my God, I love that guy. Look at him.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's coming to StokerCon. You know that?
Thank God.
Coming to my house. He'll be here in June.
Yeah.
I want to go to your house.
I don't know if it's a good idea that Rob go to your house, Brian.
Oh, God forbid we smoke cigars and drink whiskey all night. Oh, what a terrible time.
I want Rob to come to my house.
All right, so I'm not gonna remove you guys from the stage, but I am gonna shift focus here. And I'm gonna bring this up. There are my graphics. So a little bit of setup before I start reading this, because this is the start of chapter 10. So Jerry has moved into this new community, Fairview Acres, and almost immediately things are strange. His neighbors are weird, and he's incredibly introverted, and the last thing he wants is to go mingle with his new neighbors at parties that are happening every night and keeping him awake. But what's worse is that every time he goes to sleep, it seems like there's something walking on his roof. And finally, he decides that he wants to find out what it is. A huge knock startled Jerry from his slumber. He kicked back damp bed sheets, soaked with sweat, and stared at the ceiling. Overhead, a series of heavy footsteps plodded across the roof toward the center of the house. He waited for his heart to calm. He'd been having nightmares again, vivid but disorienting. He'd been floating in space, nude and impervious to the vacuum, while a nest of leeches suckled at his body. In the distance, a pair of roiling stars burned away in a dangerous orbit, destined to collide at some point in the distant future. Mere minutes on a cosmic scale, perhaps the end of time, or the start of something else. Where the hell did all that come from? He'd stopped reading science fiction in college. He wiped sweat from his forehead and listened as another set of footsteps rattled the roof from the opposite end of the house. He switched on the bedside lamp and looked at his watch. 2:08 a.m. Would he ever get a good night's sleep again? Goddamn birds, he mumbled. He went to the kitchen, retrieved a flashlight from a junk drawer, and stepped outside. The moonlight bathed the backyard in a pallid sheen, illuminating Abby's bird bath near the back corner, along with his wheelbarrow and other tools he'd forgotten to put away. The early summer air was cool against his skin, and the night was still, quiet, not even a breeze. He walked down the porch steps, winced as wet grass brushed against his ankles, and clicked on the flashlight. Movement. A sharp pop of wood. Behind, above. He spun around, panned the flashlight across the roof's edge. Nothing. He walked further into the yard, hoping he might glimpse something at a different angle. All right, bird. The circle of light crawled along the lower portion of the A-frame, left to right. He raised the light closer to the peak. A shape darted below the edge, disappearing to the other side. It was there and gone again so fast he wasn't sure what he just witnessed. But he heard it. Heavy steps, one after the other, all the way down the opposite incline. He blinked, realized he was holding his breath, and exhaled in a rush. What the hell was that? He refocused the beam, panning across the rest of the rooftop. Something glistened across the shingling, but at this distance, he couldn't make it out. Wet, maybe. Slimy. But he wasn't about to pull his ladder out of the garage to go investigate. No reason to go to all that trouble over damn birds. But was it really a bird, Jerry? Whatever he'd seen darting away, it sure as hell didn't have any feathers, and was gone so fast that he wasn't sure what he'd seen. But if you think about it, hadn't it looked like a pair of slender legs? Person on his roof at 2 a.m. Ridiculous. He clicked off the flashlight and set off for his house. Clouds rolled past the moon, and the yard grew darker. A hollow croak rattled through the night. He spun around, heart in throat, and fumbled for the flashlight. The beam clicked on, shuffled wildly about the yard until he got control of his shaking hands. Flash, the bird bath in the corner. Flash, his garden shed with its uneven doors. Flash, thick hedges and a pair of evergreens on the property line. Ghosts of the scenery lingered in his vision after he moved the beam. A low breeze swept over him, prompting a chill of spider legs to crawl down the length of his back. Something rustled in the hedges. He gasped, dropped the flashlight. The beam shuddered from the impact, flickered once, and settled on the hedgerow. Leaves whispered in the wind, the branches voicing their disturbance. Jerry stood like a deer on the highway, transfixed by the only source of light, too terrified to move, to breathe. Because there was something beyond the hedgerow, lurking just outside the tenuous circle of light, and he could only see it if he didn't look at it. It was there in the corner of his vision, standing chest high with the hedge, but that's where the shape stopped making sense. It distorted, narrowed into a thick, wriggling branch that moved freely in the air. Behind, above, the rattling call echoed into the night. In the distance, another, and then one more across the yard. The shape croaked again, louder this time. An aggressive ugh, 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 leveled in his direction. His blood ran cold. Moonlight filtered through the clouds, lifting back the veil of shadows, and he caught a glimpse of the thing, but it made no sense to him. A pair of legs? Were those jeans? And something like a long, thick neck or trunk. It rattled off another warning cry and lunged over the hedge toward him. Jerry turned and ran, nearly losing his balance on the wet grass, and clambered back up the porch steps. The croaking grew louder right on his heels. He cried out in terror as he threw himself inside and slammed the door behind him. Heart pounding, his mind locked in horror, he stood with his back braced against the door. He expected the thing to try to force its way inside, but it never did. Slowly, his panic subsided, and he finally turned and peeked out the window. The moonlit yard was empty. His abandoned flashlight laid on the grass, its beam still illuminating the hedgerow. No way I'm going back out there with those... Those what? Definitely not birds. Definitely not people. He locked the back door. If it wasn't birds, and it wasn't people, what the hell had been walking on his roof for these last 2 nights? And why was it wearing jeans? And that is an excerpt from the Sundowner's Dance, which is on sale today from Shortwave, available in hardcover, ebook, and audio. So I'm going to bring everybody back on stage here. Thank you. Thank you. By the moon's eye, friends.
So, like, it's always interesting to me, and this is a question like I've heard in the past too, like when you're thinking of what you're going to read, what's the thought process when you think about like what it is you're going to read in front of an audience?
I tried to come up with a scene, find a scene that has something creepy going on or builds up to like a snap or a punch that I can end on, so that it leaves the audience wanting to know what happens next. And that way it's more enticing for them to go pick up the book. Or, you know, case in point, when I was touring for Coal Black and Infinite, I read a scene from the Happy Town Yuletide Massacre that always ended with me screaming a line of dialogue. That was always fun. Especially when there were unsuspecting crowds in the background.
That should be like a holiday tradition now, honestly.
Kind of.
Like caroling. Just go around to your neighbors.
Yeah.
That'll go over well in rural Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think so.
I look forward to getting shot. It'll be great. I'll have to call up Keene and be like, Keene, I need you to spring me out of jail. I got caught caroling again.
I'll say again.
He's too busy saving Boosty, Todd. He can't come help you.
Oh yeah, Boosty's been having adventures.
Do you want to go to Carol's question first?
Yeah, let me scroll back up here. So Carol's question, Todd, how does it feel now that you've worked through the book?
It's similar. The only reason I say that is because it's similar to a question Scott Moses has also.
Yeah, I think Carol, when Carol asked that question, I think it was talking about getting into that character's headspace and sort of that dark place you were in.
Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely feels better now. To resume the story of what was going on in my life. You know, Erica, Tess came back benign. She's fine. She just had her recent scan a couple of months ago. She's good for another year until she goes back for a follow-up. So all free and clear. That was a huge relief off our shoulders. And, you know, it went from, okay, I got to, you know, deal with this to now, okay, now that I've had some time to pick myself back up, you know, what's the next task? You know, can I send this off to my agent? And we start the shopping process and everything. So feels good, Carol.
Pretty.
Then we had a question from Clay. Some guy named Clay McLeod Chapman. You ever heard of this guy? Have you received any reader feedback / response from folks who are of the same age as your characters? Is it any different than reader responses from someone, say, in their 20s, 30s?
That's a great question.
So that's a great question. I don't want to speak out of turn and say somebody's older than, you know, or younger than they may be. So I have heard from people who have or are currently dealing with dementia with their parents reach out and say that it was refreshing to read about this from, you know, an elderly's perspective, as far as, you know, besides like someone not knowing what they're talking about, just kind of demonizing the elderly or making the elderly creepy because of this or this or this. You know, that was my first goal. And I did have sensitivity reader read through an earlier draft to make sure that I was treating the elderly with respect. Because the last thing I wanted to do is make them, you know, demonize them in some way. So I know that doesn't really answer your question, Clay, but you're just going to have to deal with it. Buddy.
I can say that as somebody whose grandmother is 99, about to turn 100 in November, and as someone whose parents are in their late 70s, about to turn and cross over to their 80s, it all felt very real and very true to me.
Thank you.
I'm surprised you had a sensitivity reader. Not that I'm making fun of that, just but whoever they were, they did a good job, because it felt very real.
And not at all to take away from their contribution to it, but just say it occurred to me, like, it was interesting. That was a great question of Clay's, and it got me thinking, because you know, I'm not in my 70s, but I volunteered in nursing homes for 3 years, and so I was very immersed in this you know, sort of community aspect of things, in particular with folks who had dementia and it actually never occurred to me. Nothing ever stuck out to me as, oh, this is a demonization, this is generalization. They were always just characters. Yeah. So to me, that's almost like I certainly wouldn't put myself forward as someone who could do a sensitivity reading or who could speak to that with, you know, a whole lot of expertise. But from having that experience, like, there was nothing there. It was always just, they were characters. So I think that was very effective in how you wrote it.
Thank you. I do have to give shout outs to my sensitivity reader, Kenlyn. If you're watching, thank you again for your insight. Kenlyn is a friend of mine that goes all the way back to high school. So she has experience working in that field, and I was very grateful that she volunteered her time to go. That's
invaluable.
And yes, she's known you since high school?
Since high school.
I'll need her name and her contact info.
No, absolutely not. No.
I have a lot of questions.
It's okay. I bet you do.
Before tonight, if you were going to do it.
Keene even went so far as to take the pen out. Like, that's committing to the bit, Todd. That's how you do it.
I know. He is definitely committed to the bit. All right. My good friend Cassandra Celia has a question here.
It's a good one. I like this question.
How do you shift from one project to the next? Are there any rituals or brain cleansing that needs to happen before you move on from a previous project? Do you work on multiple projects at once, or are you solely focused on a singular idea you're passionate about? That's 3 questions. Just FYI.
3 great questions.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll take these one at a time. How do you shift from one project to the next?
Usually by complaining to me on Discord.
Yeah, it's true. I usually bitch about it for a good week or 2. I do have a hard time shifting from projects while one is unfinished. That's probably why my output is not as prolific as a lot of my peers. I can't work on multiple stories at the same time. because each story kind of has its own vibe and voice, and I don't want to cross-pollinate that, if that makes sense. So rituals or brain cleansing that needs to happen. I try to give myself time off. I will go catch up on my reading. I will watch movies every evening rather than, working. I will play video games. That's a big one. Just something that helps massage another part of my brain and give the creative side a rest. I find that very
refilling
helpful.
The bucket.
Yeah, refilling the bucket, replenishing the well, as my friend Nikki says. So I just realized I asked about your, or I answered your last question already. So,
why do you think it's difficult for you to focus on multiple projects? Because I've had that in the past, but only recently have been like, oh, I'm going to do like 4 things at once. And I don't like doing it, but I can do it if I have to.
Like, I can do it if I have to. I just really prefer not to.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to keep track of details and characters, because even though I'm slowly learning to document all this stuff, and keep notes, usually, like historically, a lot of the stories I write, all of it stays up here. And somehow through my weird neural, pathways, I am able to keep track of that stuff. Like, I would say 90% of Devil's Creek was done in my head.
Wow.
I kept track of all of that in my head.
It's impressive.
Yeah, I don't know how I did it, really. So I was on considerably less medication. Again, I would say that I tend to hyperfixate because of ADHD. So, it's also because if I'm focused on this thing, I'm focused on this thing. I'm not doing these other things. And, when it comes down to crunch time, I just line them up and try to knock them out as quickly as I can if necessary. But I'm contracted for several short pieces now through the end of the year. I'm going to go by which ones due first and focus on that, then focus on this one, and so on and so forth.
Didn't you text me to ignore deadlines earlier today?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I accidentally, I meant to text Amanda Headley to tell her that the remaster of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion came out today. And I texted it to Laurel, who had no context for what any of that meant. So I told her, I'm like, well, if you're looking to get into RPGs, I mean, Elder Scrolls 4 is a great place to start. She's like, yeah, but
of all time.
Yeah, probably not good for her deadlines. And I'm like, shh, ignore deadlines.
I think my response was, I know what those words mean on their own, and you seem excited. I'm glad.
So what is Scott's question here?
Scott Moses.
Curious to finishing the book. Yeah.
It's Scott's birthday, by the way. Please wish Scott a
happy birthday, Scott.
Oh God, I was afraid you were going to sing the whole goddamn song.
No, I'm not going to sing the whole fucking song.
I'm trying to give him balloons again, but it's not working.
We thought you were just raising the roof over there. Just, whoop, whoop.
Yeah. Definite that the air feels cleaner now that I've, gotten through all of that mess. I'm ready for the next mess, whatever the universe may throw at me. Because it always does.
All the birthday messages are rolling in now. I'm playing Skyrim while listening to this.
Thanks, Jason. Heather N. Larson says hi. Hi. Let's see. Yes, 3-pronged.
Nice.
Everybody's saying happy birthday to Scott.
Sorry, I completely derailed everything. No, Scott.
job,
No, it's
Laurel.
I
fine.
blame Scott.
It's fine.
Give you a Laurel and hearty handshake.
Oh, I missed this from John. Neighbors love being screamed at.
That's true. He
Yes,
screams
they
at
do.
my neighbors all when he comes to visit all the time. It's great. He brings the Long Island up here. It's wonderful.
I knew it.
As if I didn't bring
I
it
knew
up.
it. The Long Island.
All right, there you go.
Question
Tony
from
has
Tony
a question.
Petro. What?
I said Tony has a question.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see this. What is
It's
it
a great
about
question.
cosmic horror that draws you in, inspires you to write it? Love the book. That ending was beautiful. Tony, thank you, man. Cosmic horror, to me, I'm drawn to it because it speaks to kind of my outlook on existence. You know, we are, I kind of identify with the existentialist philosophy, you know, or Camus' version of existentialism, which would, you know, talk about the absurdity of life and the absurdity of existence. Cosmic horror kind of tries to put our existence in perspective, where none of this really matters because we are a tiny little crumb on a giant rock floating in a vast void of nothingness, and we are all subject to the chaos of that nothingness. But in keeping with the absurdity of it all, you also find a way to rebel against that and find meaning in the nothingness of it. That's why my take on cosmic horror tends to focus on the human element rather than just the whole Lovecraftian approach of, you know, wow, like there are all these dark gods out there and we don't, you know, we're just insects to them. And oh, woe is me, I'm losing my mind. I like to focus more on the element of, you know, okay, yeah, I've been exposed to this cosmic horror and I'm losing my mind, but this is what I'm going through as I'm losing it. You know, there's a human element to it that, you know, kind of gives it more of a robust meaning, if that makes sense. So that all plays into this personal philosophy of, you know, giving your life meaning in a meaningless universe. So if any of that makes sense, just kind of put the pieces together and you'll see that that's why cosmic horror, you know, is my jam. I hope that answers your question, Tony.
You have a question from Candice Nola.
Yeah, sorry, I missed you, Candace. My bad. Yeah, I usually take a nap when I type the words at the end. It's usually like 3 or 4 in the morning when I do that. And I just kind of, these days, I most likely am going to pop an edible and float away and until the next day. And then I'll probably go have dinner or something somewhere.
I'd like to raise a glass of THC for a moment. You know, good friend of mine.
Yes. Do you think, I appreciate seeing an older demographic centered in fiction. It's one of the reasons I admire King's Insomnia as much as I do. Do you think you will revisit this point of view again? It's gonna depend on the story. You know, I don't foresee focusing on an elderly protagonist for a while, simply because I've spent, you know, the last year focusing on Jerry Campbell. But you know, I'm not gonna say I never will, because I don't know. It's whatever the story dictates. So like the next thing I'm going to be focusing on this summer is rewrites of my next novel, Revelation Road, and most of the characters are fairly young. So again, it depends on the story.
Do you have any plans to creep around nursing homes or, you know,
We've
retirement?
got a couple up here. We can hit
communities?
them next
Don't
week.
fucking tempt me.
You want to go?
I might.
Let's do it.
I am a big fan of Bubba Hotep.
You're coming
So-
here in October. You're staying here. Let's go to some places and get weird with the old folks.
I mean, for the most part, they appreciate the entertainment. They'll probably make it weirder than you expect.
They won't appreciate that I don't have pants on, but whatever.
Well, a good chunk of them probably won't either.
I'm sure that they will have spare diapers for you.
That's true.
Yeah. I think it'll be good.
You got a question from Madeline Ross in the chat.
Yes, Maddie. You find it difficult to stop or pause while writing or editing in hyperfocus mode? I'm curious if other ADHD creatives have difficulty maintaining art-life boundaries and balance within it. So, a very emphatic yes. Erica knows when I tell her when I'm going to be working, and she knows not to interrupt me because it completely derails whatever it is I'm working on, plus it could also potentially derail me for the rest of the day. So I try to write until I hit a stopping point that I know I'm going to reach, or if I'm in crunch time and trying to finish a draft, I write until I get tired and then I stop, and then I wake up or come back to it hours later and pick up where I stopped. Yeah, Sisyphus is smiling. Thank you for saying so. What else we got here? Lots of sex in retirement homes. Might get weird. I'm well aware.
Gonna get even weirder when we get there.
So there is a tiny little story here regarding lots of sex. There's a scene that got cut from Devil's Creek. And I know I've told this story before, but I might have new readers here tonight. In one of the deleted scenes from Devil's Creek, there is a whole scene involving a geriatric orgy at a nursing home. And yeah.
Lombardo and I would like to option that right now, Todd.
Rights are for sale. Please contact Becky Lejeune.
Was Lombardo wanting to star in this, or what's he?
No, he'll direct. I'll star.
Okay. Just go ahead and close that vortex again.
Yeah.
So I've been asked to give a teaser about Revelation Road. Alan, do you mind if I talk about Revelation Road?
Not at all.
All right, man. So, because this is supposed to be about Sundowner's Dance, but I can talk a little bit about Revelation Road. So it is a follow-up to Devil's Creek in a little interesting way. It's not a direct sequel. I haven't committed to writing a full-on the next day book about Devil's Creek, but it exists in the Devil's Creek universe. It ties in with the events of that the first book in some interesting ways. It is I pitched it as film Vanishing Point meets the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is a road novel. It's a chase novel. It's about a character, these two women, couple in Detroit. One of them gets kidnapped by a van full of hillbillies, and the other character, our protagonist, steals her former drug dealer's 1972 Dodge Challenger that's been tricked out, and sets off down I-75 after them. And it's going to end up with a big confrontation in eastern Kentucky, the very, very, very tail end of Pike County, Kentucky, right nestled up against West Virginia. That is where you can find the fictional town of Revelation, or what's left of it. That's a bit of what Revelation Road is about. It's going to expand that universe of the Southland quite a bit. And I have rewrites that I have to do per Becky's notes, and that's what I'll probably be working on for the bulk of the summer. I should mention, however, that the Sundowner's Dance is a Southland novel. It does exist in the same universe. And readers who are reading closely enough may catch a reference to Devil's Creek in the book.
There's a question from Tom Duffy that you sort of referenced earlier, but if you wanted to expound upon it, you could.
Sure. Let me highlight this thing from Nikki, though. Mommy is going dark. All right, Tom, what do you got? Been through someone who went through stage 4 cancer and miraculously survived. I know I couldn't write through most of that. How are you able to push through and continue writing during the situation you went through? Not too personal a question, brother. Thank you for asking. And I'm glad that, the person close to you survived stage 4. That's incredible. How did I push through it? Well, I didn't have a choice. It was kind of the anchor keeping me sane in a very insane and uncertain time. I would say that without the book, I probably would have had a breakdown, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's kind of goes back to something Stephen King said on writing about, some people say that art is a support system for life, but sometimes it's the other way around. But it works the other way around. I don't know. I'm probably butchering that, to be honest, but you get the idea. Like, if I hadn't had the novel to finish, like, that was what kept me anchored to Earth, essentially. So thank you for asking that. Hit a retirement home. The worst that could happen is a colostomy bag thrown at you. No, there's far worse.
There is. There's a lot worse.
Rob could get a very hostile nurse to give him a catheter.
I normally got to pay for that. So what's the problem?
Yeah, how is that a bad thing?
Yeah, that's a Tuesday night for me, babe.
I mean, what you do in the privacy of your own home is none of my business. So, what else we got here? Long live the Devil's Creek orgy. Yes. Someday, if there's ever an author's preferred text, I'm going to put that back in unapologetically.
You need to just release a cutscenes collection and just start it with that.
Do it as a little chapbook or something. But yeah, this is why you never, ever, ever throw anything away. Because, one day you get an author's preferred edition, an uncut edition. Boom.
Yeah.
Oh, I still have all the deleted stuff, and I'm just looking for a publisher that can actually pay on time and has real distribution.
Oh, zing.
Present company exclusive.
Oh, yes. Present company exclusive. Was not talking about Shortwave. Let me clarify that.
Speaking of the present company, Alan, when this book first came, in your inbox or whatever, and you started diving into it, what was your original knee-jerk reaction to it?
I was very excited to see a submission with Todd's name on it. I wanted to work with Todd for a while, just having been around him in the community, read a couple of his shorts. And then seeing that the protagonist was much older than any other book I think that's been submitted to us, and some of the topics that it dealt with, I started reading right away. It kind of, at first, it gave me almost Needful Things vibes, but on a smaller scale, because you had this community with a lot of developed characters that you were following. And that's one of the things that I love about that book, is that you just get to follow so many characters. And so, obviously there was this mystery happening, and I wanted to know where that was going. A lot of times I'll ask for spoilers before I consider a manuscript, just to make sure they can stick the landing, because a lot of authors have problems with that. But I didn't do that with this book. So I kind of was going in a little blind, which I think was more exciting to read through it the first time. And I knew probably 10% of the way in, 50% of the way in, that I wanted to buy this book, or at least make an offer on it. And so, yeah, it was really exciting getting a different kind of protagonist. It was exciting that Todd had written such a nicely developed mystery and kind of piecemealed that out. I liked the community. I liked all the characters around them. There wasn't anything about it that I didn't like, and we brought in the editor just to kind of tighten things up. And a lot of it was just kind of cleaning and, maybe move this section a little bit later and hold off on revealing too much too soon. But there weren't any like major issues with it. It wasn't like I came into it like, oh, this is a mess and we need to rewrite the whole thing. It was really just kind of a tightening up. Yeah. I forget the original question because I've been talking so long at this point, but
okay. Thank you.
No, that was great. So that's good to know. It's good to know, like, your immediate reaction was essentially like a lot of hours as well when we read it, because it just hit you, right away, and you're so engrossed in the characters and the development and whatnot. So that's awesome.
Yeah. No, I was almost going to speak up earlier when you guys were talking about the character thing about it, because I think that's one of the things I think is the most difficult, especially in the indie world, where it's just kind of like, let's pump something out, let's get something out. I want to write about this topic and move on. Like, indie books are kind of the fast books. And I liked that this book took its time. And I liked that, Todd had mentioned purposely focusing on developing the characters more than in previous stories. Because I felt an immediate connection to everyone. And it wasn't a thing where it was just, hey, I want to throw random people into this scenario and play out the scenario. It really was, it wouldn't work if you take Jerry out and replace him with a different character. And Jerry's so much like me. I just most of the time want to be left alone. That, there's that immediate connection there of, oh, that's me in 30 years, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan, we definitely have a lot in common there.
You have a great question from William Jones in the chat about the audiobook.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening to the audiobook edition. I myself have not actually heard it yet. I'm still waiting on my codes from the audiobook publisher. So when it comes to feedback, if the audio is being produced, or does I basically get a list of potential narrators that they think are a good fit, and I kind of listen to. Sometimes they will have a potential narrator audition by reading like the first chapter or the first scene, and in the case of Malcolm Hillgardner, he did not have time to do a proper audition, but they sent me like a reel of his like other work. And I knew like when I heard his voice, I'm like, oh, he's perfect. He can, he nails that elderly voice that I was looking for. So, in this regard, no, I haven't heard the finished product, but based on what I heard of Malcolm's work, I'm not worried. And I've seen like a lot of the early reviews on Goodreads reference his performance and how good it is. So I'm very pleased to hear that.
And just to be clear, the audio is handled by a different publisher. It's not me failing to send Todd the audio. He would have had it months ago if he was going through us. Yeah.
No. Recorded Books picked up the audio rights for it. So, yeah, that was done separately. But, it seems to be reviewing well in Neck Valley, I believe, based on the reviews I'm seeing. Which brings me to an important point. Folks, if you're who are listening or watching this at a later date, if you have reviewed the book early and posted your review on Goodreads, please cross-post to Amazon. Greatly appreciated. Last I checked, we only have 1 rating on Amazon itself, even though we've got like over 50 on Goodreads. So please cross-post if you don't mind. No worries if you'd rather not. I get it. Amazon sucks, but at the same time, they're part of the business. So, if you could do that, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a shame they don't open reviews until release day, knowing that people send out review copies and arcs and stuff months in advance. It's a shame they don't allow that yet.
Yeah, I kind of look at them as like the Apple of the book world, publishing world. Like they're behind the times on everything until they release it, and then it's like the next big thing. But I digress. We got another question from Sandra. When you developed these characters, did you already know who they were before you began writing, or did you let them develop as you went? Usually when I first start a story, I don't know who they are. I like to let them show me. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes they're there on the page immediately. More often than not, though, I find that I start to, it's kind of like sculpting. You start with a big chunk of rock and you start chipping away at it. And each pass is another draft of the story. So they kind of become, come into shape the more you revise. Jerry really didn't start to come into focus for me until the third draft, after I got Laurel's feedback and after going through what I went through that I discussed earlier. So Jerry was always going to be an older version of myself, with my own, neurotic tendencies. He's very much introverted. He doesn't want to be bothered. Doesn't like going into crowds of people. He's depressive. He suffers from anxiety. Whole nine. And taking that as a starting point, and then building from there, I kind of got to get a better feel for who he is and who he needed to be. Oh, thanks, Uncle Brian. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mom.
Aww.
Oh,
she threw herself under the bus earlier. Did you see her earlier comment?
No, I missed.
She said that you were looking for a place like this for her.
Not about you, Mom. So we're coming up on, 9:13. We got about 15 minutes left. Any more questions? Anybody have anything else to talk about other than how awesome my book is?
I've got a random question for you.
Oh,
all right.
When you sent me the book and I read it, I think I told you this reminds me of it. It's like I told you it's a game changer for you. It's the best thing you've done. I see your writing grow exponentially between Devil's Creek and this, but I also told you it's like Bentley Little and Thomas Ligotti sat down and collaborated together. Was any of that conscious on your part? Did you think, what, I want to do like Bentley Little's the nursing home? Was
there so Bentley, I read a lot of Bentley Little when I was in college. Loved Bentley Little's work. Thomas Ligotti, I came to at a later. I was like in my 30s before I discovered Thomas Ligotti. Thomas Ligotti's work is a vibe that I try to channel.
Right.
Bentley Little, I kind of had, a sense as the plot started to come together. Like, yeah, this is very much a Bentley Little type story. But I also felt the same way about Devil's Creek when I was writing it. Like, I really do enjoy Bentley Little's work. I haven't read him in a long time, but I think The Walking is, one of the best things he's ever done. I know people will disagree with me on that.
Fuck that book.
Yeah, The Walking is fantastic. So, it wasn't a conscious thing as far as Ligotti, but I'm always trying to get to that sense of perpetual nightmare that he writes about,
right?
In terms of like atmosphere and just how the mundane can be oppressive in some respects.
Well, you did, and again, that's not to take away from you. Your voice is very strong. It's very self-assured now. It's very much a Todd Keisling novel, but yeah, you could see echoes of their influence there, and it appealed to me.
Thank you. if you get a chance, you should send a copy to Bentley, or at least to his agent, who nobody at Cemetery Dance wanted to deal with.
Maybe we can make that happen.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Jean-Francois, thank you very much. Take your time, man. It's not going anywhere. Hope you're digging Cold Black and Infinite, though. Speaking of Jean, he wrote A God in the Shed, which if you haven't read that, you should definitely check that out.
It's a great book.
Heather, you are far too kind. Oh my God. Thank you very much. I wouldn't be doing my world building if not for King. So that's a huge compliment. Thank you. What do we got here? Hi, Talitha. Just popped in sampling this book and happy release day. Thank you. Thank you. Even though what's funny is that I did not set out to write another cultish book.
It
just
lends
happened
itself
that
to
way.
it though. It's like, isn't that the nightmare? Like you show up at one of, like, I would hate to, I don't know. I would hate to, like, I guess it's not and a retirement an assisted living type facility is not like a themed, but it sort of feels like it is. I don't know. Because the idea of like the constant like gathering. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like you nailed that.
Yeah,
it's very cultish, especially because it's like it's this cult that like everyone expects you to participate in. Yeah.
Like I had the idea of
like that.
What was that, Rob?
It's like HOAs and stuff like that. Like you're expected to participate.
I mean, I kind of approached it as a corporate office mentality. You know, it's very much, oh, we're having this team building exercise. Your attendance is mandatory, and you need to be there. And why weren't you there? Like, well, everybody has to be there, so you have to be there.
Wearing your flair.
Yeah, wear your flair and your 37 pieces of flair, the bare minimum. You know, that's kind of how I went into Fairview as a functioning entity. It's like it was very much, okay, Arthur is the team leader. And now you have all these insufferable personalities that you have to work with or live beside. And, you know, that was my intent, but when I realized it was very cultish, I then started thinking about my time in a corporate office and realized, yeah, that was cultish. So
it goes along.
Oh, Shortwave is freaking awesome. Y'all just keep bringing the best of the best.
I'm into that.
Maddie had a question, not Sundowners related, but is there a favorite book or series from your childhood that stuck with you? The first two come to mind. Goosebumps, of course. R.L. Stine, the Goat, and the work of John Bellairs, House with a Clock in Its Walls. You know, that was John Bellairs, man, reading, it was the Lamp from the Warlock's Tomb. I probably butchered that title, but I think that was the first one I read. But House with a Clock in Its Walls was really a major book for me growing up. That and Goosebumps #1, Welcome to Dead House. Aw. He's only saying that because he used to be my neighbor. Thanks, Jonathan. Oh my God. Besties.
Confession, the first thing I ever stole was a Jonathan Bellairs book.
Yes!
The Figure in the Shadows, the sequel to House with the Clock in Its Walls.
I'll let you say the first thing I ever stole.
All right, Heather, thanks for tuning in.
The last thing, Laurel, was this of Todd's.
2
weeks ago.
appreciate that y'all are never going to let that die. That's beautiful.
No,
in
never.
like 20 years, 30 years, we're still going to be.
We'll be sitting in the Fairview Acres Community Association.
Absolutely.
He stole my pen.
I'll go rescue you old fuckers because, you know,
I'll be
still lifting
spooning
weights
like,
at that
you
point.
know, split pea soup into his mouth, and it's like dribbling down his chin and stuff.
I'll bring the whiskey.
Awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't care if my son puts me in a home as long as he brings me whiskey.
There you go.
It's fine.
Oh, gosh. Any more questions, folks? We got like 9 minutes left. Still have 35 people watching, which is incredible. Usually it's died down to like 2.
You want to talk about some of the in-person events that you have coming up so people in the chat can schedule time to go and see you if they're not
Good
local
idea.
to Pennsylvania?
This is why I need you to like do my marketing for me, Rob. Because I forget to do things like this. This Saturday for Independent Bookstore Day, I will be signing and chatting about the Sundowners Dance at the Doylestown Bookshop in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. The weekend after that, the Saturday after that, I will be in Fredericksburg, Virginia for the Horror Reader Weekend, Horror on the Rappahannock. I will be there for the Saturday event. And the weekend after that, I'm going to be at, for some weird reason, I'm going to be at Vortex Books and Comics, even though the owner and proprietor keeps stealing my fucking pens. Signing alongside Elizabeth Broadbent. And the weekend after that, May 17th, I believe, I will be signing and having a wonderful conversation with Jonathan Lees at Stanza Books in Newburgh, New York.
Beacon, New York.
Beacon, New York, excuse me. Where did I get Newburgh? Is that the Barnes & Noble?
That's correct.
Okay. I'll be at that Barnes & Noble, but not till this fall.
Now, will this be the first time you've hung out at length with Jonathan? Because if so, I have a cautionary warning for you.
As do I.
If Jonathan tells you he wants to take a photograph of a bridge and you walk to the bridge, plan like 4 hours ahead of time.
That was not Jonathan's fault at all. At all. I think he deeply regretted asking for that photo by hour 2.5.
Yeah, no, that was completely my fault. But,
I don't know that it was your fault either. I think it was just
no, that was my fault.
Jonathan and I have hung out at many Nikons in the past and Stoker Cons, and I'm no stranger to Jonathan. He's awesome.
Yeah. Jonathan and Laurel got an extended walking tour of beautiful downtown Wrightsville, Pennsylvania.
Which was great. And it's because it was very kind of you guys, because I do things like, well, flight's at 8, guys. What are we doing? And everyone's like, God, we thought we were going to be rid of you by like 10 a.m. max.
Author Millie Price has a question for you.
Millie!
My Aunt Brenda wants to know when I'll be back in their neck of the woods. Well, Brenda, first of all, Millie, I'll get to you in just a second. First of all, Brenda, you live in Alabama. I'm probably never going to be back in that neck of the woods. Now, Kentucky, Tennessee, we can talk. As of right now, I don't know. But if you're going to be up that way, then I will make something happen.
Kentucky, you have a new crash pad, remember?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I ordered the couch today, just so you know.
Yes. Nice. Millie Price wants me to recap the new book for latecomers. Gosh. So the Sundowners Dance, which is on sale today. It is about an elderly widower named Jerry who decides to downsize and move into an over 55 retirement community where his neighbors are really strange, and there's a big meteorite in the park that everybody loves. To tell you any more would spoil everything. So it's Cocoon meets The Color Out of Space.
Will you do my comps from now on, by the way? Because I have the worst time with comps, and you always have like the best comps.
I'm terrible with comps. Like, it took me a while to come up with that. Like, what would this be like?
I was really hoping I could offload that to you.
I
Rob,
love
will you do it for me? Can I?
I'll gladly do it for you. When he
Okay.
told me, when I was reading the book, I was like, yeah, Cocoon meets blah, blah, blah. For sure.
Thanks, Cassandra. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, if you take a selfie, tag me and Shortwave and use the Sundowners tag.
And Garrett Boatman has a question that I think is a good
Garrett, taking inspiration from settings, more specifically, how do you pick out settings for your stories? Any places in mind for upcoming tales? Well, with Sundowners, I wanted to write something that wasn't in Kentucky but still had a rural setting. So I chose the Poconos area of northern Pennsylvania because it's still part of like the Appalachian chain, and I've been to as far north as Stroudsburg there, which is where my buddy Tony Rapino lives, and it just seemed like a good retirement setting. Like it's in the mountains, you get the mountain air, it's secluded for the most part, so I could work with that. Settings for upcoming tales, I mean, Revelation Road is city, highway, woods. Detroit, I-75, Pikeville, Kentucky, coal mining country.
But the road itself is such the setting, right? I mean, just the idea of being on the road like that.
Yeah.
I dig that. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to you reading it. Once I have rewrites done, I will definitely send it your way.
That's another thing that we don't get a ton of in horror is road trip horror. I'm thinking like Saphira from Saphira and Other Betrayals was like the last one that I read that was kind of like a road trip horror thing.
I think I could be wrong, but I think Aaron Dry's novel House of Sighs is a little bit like that.
Is it?
I think, yeah. Alan Baxter, Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee all sound like fantasy towns to this Australian.
Is the guy with spiders the size of a fucking Volkswagen? Stop it.
Hey,
That's why he's like, oh,
don't knock my Australian friends too much because they did give us an Emil and the Sniffers, okay? And that band fucking rocks.
What language are you speaking right now?
Alan, if you come to Kentucky, we will ply you with bourbon. I know that you're a whiskey guy, but
it's not Foster's, but it'll have to do.
I've heard from many Aussies that Foster's is actually fucking gross.
Whatever, Australian things, boomerangs, Foster's.
Australian for beer.
He's just throwing the kangaroos in the mix, and he's just gonna do whatever. Rob. You don't even know. You don't even know.
New Zealand. That's an incredible comp. It's true.
Aaron Dries.
That language is Australian.
I mean, so look, Alan, Aaron, just to put this in perspective, my first exposure to anything Australia was Crocodile Dundee. Okay. So, anytime Australia comes up in topic in a conversation, I always go back to the scene in Crocodile Dundee where the skinny guy is like there. I think this might be the second Crocodile Dundee movie, actually. There's a skinny guy, he's just hanging around, and there's this bad guy with a gun, and he's looking for Crocodile Dundee, as you do in the Outback. And he comes across this skinny dude who's just kind of hanging out, drinking, and he tells him to leave, and, the guy's like, no, mate, I'm not going anywhere. And the bad guy's like, yeah, well, I've got a gun. He's like, I don't need a gun. I've got a donk. And you're like, the fuck is a donk? And then this big, beefy Australian dude with like one tooth in his skull pops out of the bush, and he's like, donk.
So in some, Americans think you guys are all either Crocodile Dundee or donk. Just so you know.
Oh, Crocodile Dundee is like John Wayne. That's fair.
I like him more than John Wayne, but
Honestly, yeah.
John Wayne had some shit takes.
Oh, like do the Sundowners dance. And the Sundowners dance.
There's actually a whole choreographed routine. Todd should show it to
there's
you.
a whole dance number. There's even like the steps and diagram are in the book.
We'll do it at
there's a-
StokerCon.
There's
That's
a really
the big
cute little
secret
twirl
about the
There's a cute
Sundowners dance.
twirl
It's
that
actually a
Todd does.
dancing guide.
Mhm.
It's true. Well, we are
Great
at
question there.
9:30, Todd.
Is it 9:30?
It is indeed, sir. So
Do I
how
have
are
any
you
more
feeling
questions?
now that we're coming in on the evening times of the day of your release? How does it feel now that we've commiserated, we've jested, we've enjoyed whiskey and water, and Alan has sat there looking handsome the whole time? What are you thinking now as we begin our evening going into the night?
I feel good, guys. And
Good.
That's all that matters.
I have been a nervous wreck for like the last 2 weeks over the release of this book.
Can
And
confirm.
time and time again, not only you, my friends, but readers and reviewers have reassured me that, you know, this book is legit and the reviews don't lie. This is the best release I've had to date. Thank you all for making that possible. And, thanks for just showing up. Thanks for putting down your money. Thanks for reading my work, because every time I do a launch like this, I think about where I started and how it was just like members of my family who would come to like a book signing or something, or like one person shows up and they don't actually want to buy the book. They just kind of stand there and waste my time, which is fine. But now to see that we've had 1,400 of you wanted the book before it was even out is incredible to me.
Well deserved.
So thank you. So on that note, folks, I think we are going to call it a night here with the launch party. But you all have a book to go read. All the viewers out there who are watching and have hopefully purchased their copy. And, for those who are just tuning in, as we're getting ready to tune out, the book is The Sundowner Dance. I am its author, Todd Keisling. You all have been Laurel Hightower, Brian Keene, Robert Ottone, and Alan Mostufka. Thank you all for joining me tonight. And we'll see you all later. Much love.